were 10 to 11 years old, and then I was sat at the time, so I was sort of get the
Hello, James. How you doing? Okay, if we make a start, just a few things just to either remind you or let you know. Dave Paling is doing a final year project talk a little bit later, I think at 3 o'clock. Please try and make sure that you turn up for that one. Talking about the final year projects, have you all spoken with the people that you want to supervise your projects yet? No. Yes, we've talked. Yeah, we're all right. Yeah, please make sure that you speak to your prospective supervisors. You need to get your forms signed off by Wednesday at 3:30. They've all got to be handed in at K266. So please make sure that you speak to whoever it is that you're going to want to supervise your project, and make sure that you sign that project allocation form. Get that filled out. Okay. Couple of things. As I say, that's the first thing. Make sure that you turn up for these final year project talks. They are very, very important. This afternoon, I think Dave's going to be talking about how you write your project proposal. Okay, and also I think he's also at some point going to do a session on creating Gantt charts and things like that. Okay, so very, very important that you turn up. Mixing and mastering techniques. I don't think there are any of you who are on the 15 credit version of this module, but basically it is for MUSI 60139, which is the 30 credits. This semester we're going to be looking at the mixing side. Next semester we're going to be looking at the mastering side. Yeah.
I think I'm on 15 credits, so the replacement module next semester.
Of course, yeah. Okay. In which case we'll have to try and get you on the Blackboard site for the 30 credit, and you just use the first half of it. But we'll sort that out for you. Module really is a sort of a progression from the Studio Technology modules from level 5. The assignment I shall go through with you in a little while. It will involve you working in groups. Okay. Please make sure that you'll get yourself into groups. No more than 3 people in a group, please. Okay. Can I encourage you to use the SSL for this module, if you can? Okay. Certainly for the stereo mix, some of you will probably want to do some work in the box, which is fine. But it's nice, again, just to get yourself used to using the SSL. So if you haven't had your technical instruction on the SSL, please make sure that you try and do that. For those of you, this one's kind of a sort of a precursor to next module, the next semester's module, which is commercial recording management, but that's an optional module. Whereas I say, it's just kind of almost preparatory for that. The module assessment, you're going to be doing 2 tracks. Okay, you're going to be doing a stereo mix, and you're going to be doing a surround sound mix. Okay. The audio for those tracks we're going to give you, so you haven't got to do any recording, okay? We're giving you the audio for both mixes, and there is something special about those particular tracks. And the thing that's particularly special about them is that the tracks we're giving you are awful, okay? You may want to use all of the audio information that we give you, or bits of it, but either way, you're doing a new mix, okay? How you, or what elements of that mix that you do is entirely up to you. So you are basically doing, if you will, a remix, if you will, okay? One you're going to be doing in stereo, the other one you're going to be doing in surround sound, okay? We will be giving you the stems for the stereo mix within the next couple of weeks, because we're staggering the handing dates. So the stereo mix will be in about 6 weeks, and the surround mix, you'll then have another 6 weeks, and that will be handed in at week 12. Okay. The difference between what we're doing now and, as I say, commercial recording management is that with commercial recording management, you're going to be finding the bands. So you're going to be providing your own stems. Okay. I'm not going to go too much into that. So this part is the mixing, semester 1, and semester 2 is the mastering. Please look at the handbook. I know most people tend not to look at handbooks, but please, check out the handbook. There may be different alternatives. We try and set these things out for, on a weekly basis. I will be taking the first part of the lecture, so from sort of, what time is it now? From 1 until 2, I'll be taking the lecture, and then we'll have a bit of a break, and then Doug will be taking over and doing the second half. So I'm kind of doing more the practical elements. Doug will be doing more of the theoretical elements. Okay. Groups, as I say, I think on Blackboard I've managed to do a group allocation. So can you please make sure that you sign up into groups? No more than 3 in the group. We have to get your group sorted out pretty quickly. So unless you've got your name against a group by the 4th of October, we're going to allocate you on anyway. Okay, so it's really important. If you want to work with people that you may be travelling to university with, that's absolutely fine, but make sure you get yourselves into a group. I'd prefer, as I say, no more than 3 in a group. If it's absolutely vital that there's 4 in a group or 2 in a group, please come and see me or Doug. Okay. As I say, restricted to 3. There has been times where we've had sort of maybe 2, sometimes a little bit more, but I prefer groups of 3 if that's possible. You're all expected to do an equal amount in this module, and you'll need to sign a form to say that you have performed an equal amount to this module. Okay. If you haven't, if there's a member of your group that you don't think has pulled their weight, there are 2 ways that you can do this. You can either not include them on the form, so if your name isn't on the form, we will just naturally assume that you haven't done anything, or you can email us, myself or Doug, and say, look, we don't think that this certain person has done sufficient on this particular module. So therefore, you will then have an interview. We will actually interview you just to see how much of the work that you've done and how much you've contributed. Okay. Don't very often get that situation, but please be aware that that's going to happen. And if you don't perform as much, then I don't think it's fair that you get the same marks. Yeah, is everybody happy with that? Yeah, okay. So, practical element, please use the SSL. It's great for your CV if you can. Okay, please use the SSL. If you haven't had your technical instruction on the SSL, please make sure that you see Aaron or Alex. I think that they're going to be doing some set TI this year for the SSL. Don't know when it is yet. I think they're yet to sort that out. 5th of October. Okay. So yeah, if you haven't had your TI on the SSL, 5th of October, please make sure that you go and book yourself into the TI sessions. Okay. Before I go on, maybe what I should do is just quickly run through the assignment with you. In a little bit more detail. As I say, your first submission date is the 4th of November. That is for the stereo mix. And although it seems like an awful long way off, 17th of December is your surround mix. For your advice or a bit of a heads up, the problems that we've had in the past with the surround mixes of people, they've not bounced the surround mix out properly, and therefore it won't play on any surround systems, okay? To try and combat that, although we're going to talk about something called ITU 775, which is the standards for surround sound, what we suggest that you do is output your mix as 6 individual WAV forms, or WAV files, or AIF, whichever you'd rather, okay? That way, at least we can then allocate each one to an individual speaker, okay? It's not the norm way to do it, but it's the only way that we can guarantee, or hopefully guarantee, that we can mark your work. Because obviously, if we can't hear your work, then it's simple, we can't give you a mark, okay? So please make sure that you consider that when you do your bounces. So in your groups, you're required to produce 2 mixes of a pre-recorded piece of music, and you'll need to do a stereo mix and a surround mix. I've put there the kind of things that we're looking for. Okay, so the stereo mix is worth half, surround sound mix is worth another half. Okay. In order so as that we can fully understand what you have done, and also to either give you higher marks or indeed lower marks perhaps, you're also going to be required within your portfolio is you're going to do a presentation. Okay, for the stereo mix, you're going to do a PowerPoint presentation. You don't have to present it. We just need to see what you have done, including screenshots, any additional information as to how, or the processes that you've gone through in the way that you have made your stereo mix. Yeah? Okay, so along with your CD, or we might maybe do this, the stereo mix on a digital download, you're going to have to also produce a PowerPoint presentation so that we can see the way that you have created your mix. Okay. For your surround sound, as well as your surround sound mix, you should also include an interview. Okay, you're going to talk through the way that you've prepared and mixed your surround sound. And the questions that we're going to be asking you is what was the general approach that you took towards the panning of your surround mix? What corrective processes that you used? What creative processes that you used? And what sort of precautions did you use to ensure that the environment was appropriate? We'll be going into environmental mixing during the module. And why you used the platform that you did. What on earth is that? So yeah, so you know, things. But those are the kind of considerations that we're looking at. Okay. And as I say, we've staggered the hand-ins purely so that it's going to be easier for you to do that rather than trying to cram absolutely everything in the last 2 weeks. Because these are level 6 modules, and it is very, very important that obviously your level 6 is worth an awful lot of marks. If you absolutely desperately need the studios open on a Saturday in order to work, please let me know and I will do my best to get them open for you. There won't be any technical support here, but as I say, at least we can get the studios open for you in order for you to complete your work. I think you should be able to complete it without coming in on a weekend, but it's an offer that's there, you know, just in case we can actually do it. Okay. Okay, so this is going to be quite a short lecture. Doug isn't going to be doing today, so we start the lectures in earnest tomorrow, next week. What I wanted to do more than anything is just to get us to think about production. Okay, and a lot of it is kind of obvious, but I think that we need to consider what we're doing. Sometimes I often think that production is almost a sort of a, it's almost like a technical compromise, because sometimes we can't find in what we're recording, in the music that we're mixing and producing, we can't often find anything useful. So I'm wondering at times whether mixing and production is almost like either a technical or creative compromise. Okay, so sometimes, as I say, we're having to reinvent things that either are intrinsically not there in the first place, or we're having to enhance them in order for us to do something useful. But a question for you then is that if we were producing for a record company, we were producing a band or an artist for a record company, we're having to do a production and a mix that is going to reflect well on both the record company and the band. So who are we actually working for? Anybody got any ideas or any thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say who's paying the bill.
Yeah. Good. Yes, a good point. Yeah, whoever's paying the bill. Yeah, fair enough. But what if the people who are paying the bill aren't the people who necessarily know how good a record should sound?
I think you should work for the artist, because surely the record label sign the artist in the first place.
But what if the artist wants to go down a completely different route to the record label?
The artist and the record label.
Say again, sorry.
Sometimes they picked you, the artist picked you.
Yeah.
The record label, they usually want to impress because they might hire you again next time.
Yeah. It's a dilemma that I've often had where the record company obviously are paying for the recording time, so they want whatever it is that they want. But the artist doesn't agree with what the record company wants. Many, many years ago, there was a band called It Bites, who were a fantastic band. And they had a couple of hits, and the record company wanted them to go down this wonderful commercial route, you know, producing more and more hits. But basically, they were a prog rock band. So they just wanted to do prog rock. It was just kind of accidental. There were a couple of their songs were actually quite commercial. So, you know, the record label said, you know, we want more of the hits. The band said, no, we don't want to produce that kind of music. We want to produce prog rock. And the label dropped them. I tend to work for the song. I'm not really bothered about the record company. I'm not really bothered about the band. I tend to work for the song. And sadly, if it means that when the band have gone home and they've not done what it is that they've asked them to do, and I have to either bring in another guitarist or do something myself and convince them the next morning that they've actually played it, that's what I've done. Because, as I say, I work for the song. There's just, you know, I can't do anything other than do the best for the song, because that, at the end of the day, how the record company market it, how the band want it to sound, how they want to market it, it's almost kind of immaterial. What's material is that I've got to do the best for the song. And as I say, if it means you're doing absolutely everything that you can in post-production in order to get the best out of the song, then do it. And as I say, once the band have gone, just replay it. I've done an album where, you know, it looks like there's 5 people actually playing on the album and not one of them did. Actually, no, the singer, he sang. Well, you can't replace the singer, unfortunately, much as I'd like to on some of the projects that I've done. So I suppose what is production? Well, first of all, I think it's a compromise. I think it's always a compromise. And I've got there, it's the process of manipulating a piece of music and its sound contents to improve on its quality as an overall performance. I've said this many times to you over the years, is that music, at the end of the day, it's great that we consider it as an art, and it is great that we can do that. But I think the other thing that we have to consider is that it's still something that we need to sell. It's a clothes peg, you know, it's a car, it's a washing powder. It's something that you've got to work with in order to make it commercial. It would be fantastic if we could all do exactly what we wanted to do in our own bizarre ways, making music in strange ways, doing prog, doing whatever it is that we do. But at the end of the day, unless you have got a sort of a registered charity number tattooed across your forehead, I'm assuming that most people in here want to make a living out of something to do with music. And I think if we do that, what we've got to do is that we've got to make that music stand out, or at least compare with the other soap powders, the other clothes pegs that are on the market. So if we don't have that in the original version, i.e. the band, then we've got to do something about it. Okay, so that's why I say that it's to sort of take the sound contents and try and improve on the quality as an overall performance. And as I say, let's make it into something that is comparable. There are lots of ways that we can do that. The first way is that as we're mixing, maybe what we want to be doing is just having a copy of another track that's currently attracting commercial exploitation that we can constantly refer our mix to. Remembering, of course, that the thing that we're trying to compare it to has gone through the mastering process. Okay, so really we're kind of at a little bit of a loss in as much as that we're doing a mix that hopefully is going to compare against, that we can compare against, but there has been another process after that particular mix process. I think the other problem that we generally have is the way that we encounter music now has completely changed. Kind of in my day, going back 600 years, you know, there wasn't very many ways that we could experience music, as in a sort of a consumer type thing. We'd all got, you know, our stereos in our house. We've got something in the car maybe, but nowadays we got, you know, most people listen to music either off their phone with, you know, with earpieces or whatever. Some people listen in cars. Some people listen at home. Most people listen through their computer. So that gives us another problem as mixing engineers, because what do we want to make it sound good on? Yeah. So again, it comes back to that technical compromise. It might not be the best mix that you've ever done, but as long as it sounds half good on lots of things, is that what we're aiming for? Because it's great that we've got, you know, really nice speakers in our studios, but at the end of the day, if it's all going to be converted to MP3 and people are going to listen to it through earplugs or whatever, it's just not, you know, we can't necessarily use the studio as the reference point. But we also, sorry, carry on.
There's those on that, like iTunes, that have been produced for iTunes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They can advertise it on sometimes.
Yeah, people are targeting more and more, but I think what we've got to accept is that whatever happens, there's going to be some kind of compromise, or indeed some coloration in the sound. Because yeah, it's fantastic that we're getting the top end just to sit right, but you know, by the time it gets knocked down to MP3, it's all gone anyway. So do we want to concentrate on that top end? Well, I suppose we've got to, really, but it's still got to sound great when it gets downgraded to MP3. So it's become a real problem. Mixing now is much more difficult, I think, than it used to be, because we've got this whole raft of new technologies, and not good technologies in some cases. I have to confess, I went to an AES meeting once, and I was talking to this guy, and he said, you know, just having a general chat about sound and all of that lot. And he said, and I got talking to him about how much I disliked MP3, because I really do dislike MP3, and I was going on for ages about how awful MP3 is. And he said, oh, what do you do? And I told him. And I said, what do you do? He says, oh, I was one of the team who invented MP3s. So, yeah, I was pleased. Yeah, so yeah, we've got problems. We've got a lot of problems. We've got, as I say, we've got to produce for 44.1s for CD quality. We've got to produce for MP3. We've got to produce for lots of different things, which gives us a slight disadvantage. So we've got that problem. The other problem, of course, is that we've now got more genres of music than we've probably ever had. So again, being genre specific is getting a little bit more difficult, because we've probably got a track that we can produce in as many different genres of music, and it will have different commercial exploitation values and possibilities than we've ever had. You know, that's why we get so many opportunities to do remixes. So how do we achieve production? Well, I think a lot of us have got a preconceived idea. Okay, we hear a piece of music, we see the band, we've got a preconceived idea in our minds as to what we want it to sound like. Has anybody ever achieved that? I've never, ever, you know, you can hear it in your head. What we need is a thought to USB converter. You know, little hole in your head where you stick a USB lead, and whatever it is that you think that it's going to sound like comes out the other end. We haven't got one of those, unless you want to invent one, please, if you could. Yeah, so we've got this, and I think, and again, you probably haven't noticed it, but I think that because of the technology is getting better, I think we're getting further and further away from the concepts of what we want. Because when we were limited to 24 tracks of analog or whatever, the limitations of the equipment meant that you worked a lot harder on thinking or getting the sound that you've got in your head. But nowadays, we can have that 130th track with the triangle being hit once, somewhere in the middle of the song. Okay, we have got that possibility. So condensing ideas, I think, is very, very difficult. And I think we're all guilty, and I certainly am, is that we never finish anything. Okay, I don't suppose that was ever different, to be perfectly honest, because I don't think I ever finished anything when I was working with 24 tracks of audio. It's just that the record company says, right, you've got until this date, and after that, we're going to take it off you. It doesn't matter what it sounds like. Okay, so this idea that we can duplicate what we hear in our head, I think is kind of a fallacy, and I think anybody who says that they can do that and do it every time, I don't think that's entirely true. And also, we've got to be aware, as we've said, about the direction and the genre of the song, and make it sit within a genre. And again, I don't know about you, but I find that increasingly difficult to maintain when we have such a wide diversity of genres. I mean, you know, rock music, you know, when I was a kid, you had heavy rock, you had rock, and then, you know, towards the late 70s, you had heavy metal. But nowadays, how many versions of rock is there? And they've all got their certain niche. Dance music, you know, house, hard house, whatever it is, you know, R&B. You've got lots and lots of different genres of music, and music could probably fit in any of those genres. But as a producer, we've got to make it sit in that genre and actually make it sell or make it credible. Okay? Because if a record becomes a hit, it's because of the band. If it's not a hit, it's because of the producer. You will get blamed. You know, so, and also your next job is only as good as your last hit record or your last job that you did. So something, again, to consider. And also we need to develop the song and build on it so it becomes a solid piece of music. I think that's probably one of the most important elements. What is a song? You know, there will be elements of a song where that's where the hook is. You know, that's where that really catchy line is. Let's make the most of it. It might be that the songs that we're presented with have got no hook at all. So what are we going to do about that? Maybe we've got to invent a hook on something. Has anybody heard a song called Baker Street? Yeah. What does anybody remember about Baker Street? Saxophone thing. I can't even. I've heard the song a million times, but I can't remember the song. Sweet Child of Mine. What do you remember? The guitar. Yeah. So it might not be the hook that we consider to be the thing. You know, I'm sure when the production process was going on, I would imagine that most people wouldn't have known that the hook for Sweet Child of Mine was that guitar part at the beginning. But it's kind of, for me, the song, I can't stand Axl Rose anyway, but its voice sounds like a cat. Not a very musical cat at that. But you know, we've got to identify that where that hook is, and I think that's what we've got to play on more than anything. Make people remember it. I think that's what it is. So that kind of goes on with that one. Isolate the important elements of the song and emphasize them. Dance music. I don't do dance music. I don't understand dance music. I'm too old to understand dance music. I don't know what it is that I'm listening to with dance music, but clearly somebody does, because there are songs with no songs. There's like songs with no melody, with no lyrics, with no vocal on it. So again, you know, as we said earlier, it might not be an obvious, whatever it is that we're doing, it might not be that obvious. So yeah, so, you know, take from that whatever you will. I'm going to try and play this. If not, I'm going to have to resort to a plan B. I'm going to have to resort to a plan B. Have I got a plan B? Listen to this track. Marvelous. That was the remix version, the radio-friendly version. Okay, what did you think?
Who sang it?
Sorry?
Who sang it?
Not telling you. What would you do to improve it?
Tune vocals.
Record everything again.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, let's put it another way. What was right about that track? That would be a bit quick. Sorry?
It was a song.
Is it? Sing it back then.
The drums were out top as well.
Yeah, the drummer couldn't keep time if he got a calendar, quite frankly. Yeah, it's pretty shit. Yeah, there are certain things that we can do, and there are certain things that we can't do. And I think in there is a good example of what we can't do. There's a lot of elements that we just can't save. We can save them if we either replace them or treat them slightly differently. Okay, and unfortunately, that's kind of what we've got to do as far as production is concerned. There are things that we can change, but I think half of it, the advantage of things, is knowing what we can't change. Okay, so for example, the process that you get when you, this was a track that somebody sent me into my studio saying that they wanted to do an album, and I thought, if I've got to listen to that for a month, I am going to have to kill myself, or them. They were awful, absolutely awful. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't think there was anything there that I could work with. There was no songs, there's no sounds, nothing there that was particularly relevant. So the formula, the idea that I formulated was that that's one turd you can't polish, quite frankly. So therefore, you know, it might be that that's what you formulate, that the fact that there's just nothing about the music that you can pull out. The vocal, yeah, the vocal was interesting. I think that was very diplomatic. It was interesting. Maybe you could have got something from the vocal, but there was just, you know, all of the songs. There was no songs. There's nothing there to hang from. So if we look on that track, and I suppose based on earlier statements, is production artistic? Well, I suppose, yes, it's got to be artistic. It's got to be commercial, because otherwise what is actually the point in us actually doing anything with it in the first place? Okay, as I say, hopefully we're all trying to make some money out of it. Is it individual? Is it cross-genre? Again, something that we need to consider. And is it designed to be acceptable, and to who? Yeah, I'm sure that we all want to make music because we like it. But is that necessarily acceptable to a commercial market? And the answer is probably not, I would think. So signs of bad production, well, we can hear it. No contrast, no texture, no lack of focal point. Again, what is it that we're listening to? What is our ear actually picking up on? You know, what is it that we're actually going to be doing? As I say, no focal point. What are we actually listening to? We have to suggest the ideas into people's heads, don't we? Really, because they don't know the processes that we go through. So, however they perceive the music is the way that we tell them to perceive the music, if that makes sense. Noisy mixes, hums, pops, countings, we don't want any of that. No clarity. That one is becoming a big problem for us, as we said, because some of our clarity, by the way that it's going to be distributed to our end listeners, a lot of the clarity that we try and retain is going to be destroyed, because it's going to be all MP3'd up and it's going to sound that big. I shouldn't be talking this way about mastering, but I've had so many mixes completely destroyed by people who've mastered. I don't trust any mastering engineers at all. I think I'd much rather do it myself. Actually, there's only one guy that I did use, but he was a terrible alcoholic and he's probably dead now. It's true. I've got to tell you about him. I've got to tell you about him. His name was George Peckham. bless his heart. And well, and you used to have to book your session with him before 12 o'clock, because 12 o'clock he was in the pub, and the afternoon you just forget it, you know, it's just not going to happen. And his nickname was One Knob George, because and he'd mastered for people like the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, you know, he'd done all of the big stuff. And all he got was, you just go in with either a CD or in those days it was a DAT, and he just got this big valve thing. And it had got a couple of buttons. I think it was home. I think he made it himself out of a crisp packet or something like that. It's 3 or 4 buttons and this big baker-like knob in the middle that he used to sit there going. And I don't know what it was doing, but whatever you could take in the best mix that you've ever done, and you think you can't improve on that, and one knob would be there. And it had always come out absolutely brilliant. Anyway, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No feeling to a track. Maybe that's not so relevant nowadays, because maybe we do want our music to sound quite regimented. I think the skill is to probably make it regimented, however, to still retain something about it that's got a bit of feeling about it. And I mean, people do that with dance music. You know, obviously the feeling of dance music is the fact that, you know, it makes you want to dance, I guess. So you know, we can do it even though we're working within a, you know, a sort of a sterile sort of function, as you will, if you will. But the other thing is that maybe we just, because we've got all of the bangs and whizzes, maybe we're overplaying things, too much reverb, maybe, you know, too many delays, maybe too much chorus. For those of you who've used the SSL, you'll probably notice it's only got 3 or 4 auxiliary sends. And there's a reason for that, is because a lot of the top engineers don't need any more than 3 or 4, because we don't plow lots of effects on our music, or the more effects that we put on there, maybe it comes disjointed. You know, I've seen so many of students who, you know, you see their mixes, and there's like, you know, a reverb on the vocal, there's another reverb on the guitar, there's another reverb on the drums, there's a delay, a chorus, goodness knows what else, loads and loads of effects, and you think, well, it's just not coming together as a track. And probably the reason for it not coming together as a track is that we're just processing it too hard. We're just putting too much in there. Maybe that's, as I say, maybe that's not the case for dance music. I don't fully understand those processes, but I think if we're doing other kinds of music, maybe you need a long reverb, a short reverb, and a delay. And maybe that you use those 3 elements or those 3 effects on whatever element that you can in the track. Inconsistent levels, instruments or lyrics that can't be heard. Again, it's picking out the focal point. I'm guilty, probably more than anybody, if I tend to not put vocals too loud, and I think that's always my failing. So what I tend to do then is I'll do 3 or 4 different mixes, one with the vocals that, you know, 1, 2, 3 dB up, a couple with the vocals a little bit further down, and purely for the fact that when we go into the next process, which is the mastering process, it might be that the vocal level might have been great pre-mastering, but it ain't going to be any good when we start mastering, because maybe we're going to squash it a little bit too hard. And again, although we're going to be talking about it next semester, I think I don't know about you, but I think this loudness war has got to stop. I mean, everything is just trying to be louder than everything else that you've ever heard. And I think what we're doing is that we're just taking creativity and the dynamics out of music. I know why they're doing it. It's because they notice your track more than anybody else's track when it's played on radio. But I think this loudness war has got to stop at some point. Does anybody else think that? Please say yes. You're the next generation. Yeah, I think I love compression more than anybody, but as I say, I think there's a difference between compression and this loudness war. I think it's kind of, at some point maybe it's got to stop. Dull or uninteresting sounds, either generic or dated sounds, stands to reason, I guess. Lack of direction. You know, where is it going to sit? You know, we've got to make this track, got to make these tracks sit within a genre. Well, what's the genre? What are we going to do? What elements are we going to do to this track in order to make it sit somewhere? Yeah. Unsuitable sounds or arrangements, well, you know, that's something that we sometimes can't do anything about because technically there's nothing in the song or in the artist in order for us to pick up on. Yeah. And definitely unsuitable performers. The only people that we can't really do anything about is the vocalist. I don't know about you, I'm kind of sick to death now of Melodyne. It's got us out of a hole, but I think the problem is now is that everything is competing to be more and more perfect. Two artists that I suggest that you listen to for what I would consider to be great mixes is an American artist called Sheryl Crow. I don't know whether you've ever come across her. There's a song called If It Makes You Happy, which to me is probably one of the best sounding records I've ever heard. It's brilliant, absolutely stunning. And another guy for completely the opposite, this guy called Steve Earle. Again, another American artist. He is too rock and roll for country music. He's too country for rock and roll music. He just sits in somewhere in between. His vocals are always out of tune, generally not quite in time, but the feel of his records is just absolutely brilliant. Again, a point of listening, a song called I Feel All Right by Steve Earle. Please listen to that. It is just, it's craft, you know. It's really, really good. We have obvious ways that we can change things. We obviously have the ability to put Melodyne on, but again, I don't know about you, I'm sick of Melodyne. I'd much rather do the vocal 10 times and then comp it up, and we'll go through comping techniques, rather than constantly relying on tools. Okay, we know that we can quantize drums, but do we want to go through the process of quantizing drums, a 4-minute song, and going through and quantizing the drums? Well, well, the pubs are opening. You know, I would rather spend time in the pub rather than sitting there trying to get every snare drum totally in time. We can use lots and lots of different ways that we can enhance. There are things that we just can't do. First of all, as I say, the quality and the sound of certain instruments. You will get it when you start doing recordings and you start working in recording studios. Somebody will come in with a, you know, guitar and amplifier set that they've bought from Argos, and they will want you to sound like Yngwie Malmsteen, you know, and with the greatest of respect, you're not going to be able to do that. You know, it's just, it's whatever is inherent in the sound. We can't invent frequency. If a singer hasn't got a very qualitative aspect to their voice, we can put them in tune, but that's all we can do. We can't improve on the quality of their voice. So at times, I know, it's, as I say, the focal point is often with the vocalist and we can't change that, but maybe other elements we have to consider, other things that we can or maybe can't do. So the things that we can't maybe do a great deal of is the musicianship. Well, as far as I'm concerned, quantize them and then wait for them to go home. Because if you can't quantize them, do it yourself. Simple as that. And you'd be amazed. I've only ever been caught out once. You know, the band have gone home. I've sort of played it all myself when they've gone home. And they come back the next day and I said, oh yeah, I stayed over for a couple of hours. I've just done a bit of comping here. You know, just got, you know, got the good bits that you played, put them all together. It sounds amazing. And I've only ever been caught out once by somebody said, I never played that. So you can do something about that. Songwriting skills, well, I suppose that's part of a producer's job, isn't it, to understand the arrangements and maybe try and enhance on the arrangements. What is it that we want to be listening to? What is it that we want to pick up on? Quality of instruments and the recording equipment. Well, again, that might be something that we don't have any kind of sort of problem. We've got problems and we can't solve. Drums, desperately, you know, at least drums we can do something about it. We can put a sampled snare drum on that or whatever. But yeah, generally drums are the big letdown. Drum replacement tools or virtual instruments or whatever. Room acoustics, unfortunately, we can't do anything about. We can't take bad room acoustics off a recording. We can't do it. It's just not possible. So again, where we record, where we produce, where we mix, just as important, or probably more important now than it's ever been. So the question is that where does production start and mixing end? And conversely, where does mixing end and production start? Anybody got any views? I would argue that they're both completely intertwined nowadays. Who engineers themselves here? Who produces themselves? We all do. Sorry? Yeah, but yeah. I often think, though, that it's quite dangerous for us to produce ourselves, because often an extra pair of ears, whether it be good ideas or bad ideas, an extra pair of ears is actually quite helpful, because it might be that we think the hook of the song is a certain thing, because that's in our minds. Well, if you've got an extra pair of ears, that might say, well, hang on, you know, that's not right. We might produce a mix, and we think it's great, but maybe other people don't. And I don't know whether you've had this so far. The first thing to do whenever you do a mix is get the band out of the control room. Just get rid of them. You know, because what happens is that, you know, they'll all be sitting at the back, and then you'll get the mix together and the drummer says, well, can you turn the bass drum up? So you turn the bass drum up. And then the bass player says, oh, I can't hear my bass. Can you turn my bass up? So you turn the bass up. And everything, yeah, the faders start here and then they end up here. And then you're looking for, like, you know, your electric jigsaw to extend the faders so they can go up to there, because that's where it's going to end up. You know, at some point somebody has to take responsibility for the track and for the mix. So sometimes I think being a mixer producer is not really advantageous. It's nice to get an extra opinion, as long as it's not the band, because I don't know anything. Okay. So where does the engineering part fit in? Well, the engineering part, I suppose, is the recording process, the technical process. We're kind of fortunate in as much as most of us have got a lot of the sounds built into the box now, and it's just a way that we're manipulating, producing, and mixing. So therefore, it's a little bit of an easier story, I think. I always use this little demonstration in as much as that we are often responsible for that particular thing. We're obviously taking the sound, which is our band, our vocalist, our artist, whatever they are, and we have got to make some kind of perception that we can then pass on to the end user and give it a little bit of a meaning. You know, so we are actually suggesting what that music should sound like. We are and with these mixes that you're going to be doing, that's what I want you to be doing to me, because they're not great recordings. So, you know, I need, you know, that perception, and what you pass over, we kind of at times have to get from a really, really bad recording. Okay, so again, something to consider. So if we think of sound as being actually what it is, we've got frequency, an amplitude, and it's existing in a period of time which creates a waveform with a simple or complex sort of timbre, that's actually what we're dealing with. We're dealing with frequency, we're dealing with amplitude. I'm going to do something, I'm going to try and do something. I don't know how I'm going to do it, so let me just think. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you some tones. Okay, I'm hoping this is going to work. If it doesn't, I do apologise. Right, this isn't going to. Let me just. I don't want you to cheat. Okay, I'm going to play you some tones. Can you hear it? Are you sure? Do you want me to turn it up a bit more? Wednesday, 1 sugar. 1 kilohertz test tone. Yeah. Okay. Play you a 500 hertz. Oops. Okay. So now we've got some kind of perception of a pitch and an octave. We can relate pitch and we can relate sound. This is called critical listening skills. There's lots of CDs that will teach us these kind of things. What I want to do, you've heard 2 frequencies, and I'm going to play back, or play you now, some different frequencies. Okay, and I want you to tell me what frequencies they are, okay? So this is your first one. Okay. This is the second one. So what frequency is that? What frequency is this one? Which frequency is this? And which frequency? No. Okay, so the first one I played you, what was that? Anybody? 2K? Anybody else? Yeah, it's 2K, yeah. Second one? 500, yeah. Next one? Yeah. Next one? It's actually 5 kilohertz. And it's really weird because it's almost like we've got a perception that that was a really high frequency, but it isn't. It's only 5K. What about the last one? 10, yeah. So it's kind of easy, if you will, when we are putting these kind of, when we can relate things to frequency, okay? And this is kind of the way that a lot of us learn to do mixing, in as much as that we relate what we're doing to something else. And that's kind of easy to do, because when we've got a structure of frequency, we can then start looking at where we're putting things within that structure, okay? A technique that I use, or used to use, and I'll show you the way that I do it, is that if we can pinpoint certain frequency bands and put elements of our song within those frequency bands, then everything has got a place, you know, it's got a place for everything and everything in its place. But it's often the skill of an engineer, I think, and the skill of a mix. It's not just about putting what should be in that place, it's actually taking it out of where it shouldn't exist. Because as we know that there are an awful lot of frequencies in a guitar, but are they useful frequencies? Because it might be that the useful frequencies of the low end of a guitar are actually clashing with the top end frequencies of a bass guitar. So do we really need those frequencies in there? So what a lot of people do is that they will take the whole mix, if you will, and they will convert that into an exercise of EQing, you know, adding EQ or whatever. I think probably one of the best tools that we have are filters. So we can just filter around the useless elements of the sound and concentrate on the elements which are going to be useful for us. And I would go one stage further than that and say the elements or the secret of a great mix for me is all in the middle frequencies. Forget the top end, forget the bottom end. The elements for me, if you can make everything work in middle frequencies, then you've got a good mix. Anybody got any ideas why I would make that statement? Say here. Not necessarily just where the vocals are. Yeah, speakers will produce middle end all day, every day, and as you know, for all of as much middle end frequency they can handle. Yeah, sorry, go on. Yeah, so if we can make it work in the middle end frequency, middle end frequencies, we've got a mix. The top end, we haven't got to worry too much about because let's face it, nowadays we put it through an MP3 and we're going to lose them anyway. The bottom end, the speakers don't really produce very well. So we've got to be a little bit more concerned about the bottom end frequencies because it's the frequencies that our speakers really don't do too well on at all. So to me, the danger is always the bottom end frequencies, and the top end frequencies, they might not appear when the end user gets them anyway. So to me, making the mix work in that middle end frequency range, say middle end frequency, anything between sort of 250 and maybe 7-8K, that's to me where music should exist because it's what our speakers do. Yeah. Going to do a slightly different test with you. And again, I don't know, I'm hoping this is going to work. We were saying about the ways in which music exists and the way that we kind of process music. This is going to be either work or not work. Hang on, let me just see. Right, okay. I'm going to play you some sounds. And what I want you to do is that I want you to relate the sound that you're going to listen to, but I'm only going to play it back through a laptop. Okay? So, I'm going to play you some white noise. Everybody knows what white noise is, yes? Every frequency from 20 to 20 at equal amplitude. So, some white noise. Yeah. So, I'm going to play that white noise again, but I'm just going to filter it. So, what frequencies, or between which frequencies, is this? Say again? Yeah. So anybody got any ideas where they're filtered? Between 1 and 2K. Okay. Next one. Oops. Next one is this one here. No, it isn't. It's this one. Any ideas? No. About what? 500 hertz. It's between 300 and 400 hertz. Okay. Next one. Between 500 and 3K. And the last one. It's been between 1 and 10 kilohertz. All of those sounds, however, were played at the same amplitude. All I've done is filtered things. So what we were saying earlier about how we create a mix and how difficult it is to create a mix now is more important, because maybe some of us are actually listening to music where the speakers, the end result is probably no better than what we've got sitting on our table. So that one that was between 200 hertz and 300 hertz, that's a really important frequency range, but we can't hear it, or it's certainly not as obvious for when we play back through our systems. So does that mean that we've got to turn it up? We've got to concentrate on that frequency range. Because if we do, then when we play it through bigger speakers, it's going to sound awful. So it's a constant trade-off. Yeah? We've got a constant trade-off of audio information that we've got to make it sound great through here and through our speakers at home, and maybe in our speakers in the car or in our studio. So it's a constant trade-off. Yeah? I'm going to leave it there for today. Next week, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be looking at drums. Okay, specific little tips and tricks that we can use with drums. Can you please, somebody got a piece of paper and sign a register, if you would. Yes, somebody could put a bit of paper on the front, if you could sign that on the way out. And 3 o'clock, please be back here at 3 o'clock prompt, so Dave can go through how you're going to write your project proposal. Okay. Next week, as I say, the session will be longer because Doug will be coming in the second half. Okay, thank you. Yes. Did I get your email at all? I did get your email.